Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. A story over at The Guardian caught my attention today. Evidently some audio out there of a rail worker saying, hey, we got some bad bearings here. Might want to tag this rail car for some repair. Maybe get it looked at, maybe. Only to have the manager say, no, we don't delay. That's going to delay the cargo. Send it right on down. And this is not surprising. This happens in talking with railroaders and talking with workers in general. This kind of stuff happens all the time. It reminds me of, you remember a guy named Don Blankenship? Remember the king of coal from West Virginia? Remember after the Massey mine disaster, it started coming out, some of the stuff that they were doing? You know, there was that memo that your core job is to run coal. You know, we don't need to do any of those safety regulations that are literally crazy. You know, that stuff. Your job is to run more coal. That's not just the coal industry. And I remember back then saying, it's just not there. It's everywhere where workers are powerless to stop it. Powerless to have a voice, powerless to have the control to say no. And I've said before, look, I have been in those situations where you've had things that have been unsafe. As a truck driver for all the years that I've done this, I've had units that you go, not safe, not taking it. But fortunately, I've always had the backing to say, if I'm not taking it, I'm not taking it. That's where today's conversation I had a very long and a really good conversation with a railroader from out west. Again, he's real skittish about getting his name out. And I don't blame him. When you're talking about these big behemoth, these monopolistic companies and the power that they have to make your life miserable. My goal is not to get anybody in trouble and have their life situation change. So I was grateful for him calling me and sharing, what a day in the life is, what the 18 to 20 years that he spent on the railroad, what that's been like over this period of time. And it's been as we've been talking about. Years ago, you had people who did specific crafts. That was their job. And they did their job, and you were called to do your job, and you those didn't mix. This was pre-precision scheduling railroading. PSR, we'll just call that, because this was before that. This is when they had, a third more employees before they started really clamping down on, we got to squeeze the quarter till the eagle screams. And he basically reiterated everything that we've been talking about. The amount of workers, slashed, the job classifications taken away, basically people doing things that they're not qualified for, supervisors saying, don't worry about it. We'll push it off to the PM, the preventative maintenance, a year from now. All the things that we've been hearing about. But to hear him go into, the stories of the day to day, and this isn't just an occasional situation. It's a day-to-day fight. It's a constant fight to get these supervisors, these management people who are basically bean counters, who've got quotas to meet, and your health and safety, the public's health and safety, well, that be damned. They got numbers to meet. They got quotas. And that's all they see because, again, I've talked to people who have been put in these precarious situations and go, oh, I made it through a hairy one. Through my skill and ability, for the grace of God, however you're going to frame that, made it through. And again, this is another one of those scenarios where it's the worker who ends up getting the short end of the stick. And I said to him, I go, look, I've been a union member for over 30 years. My union backs me up. I have a contract. He goes, well, let me stop you there. We don't have a contract. We have an agreement. And this, should have known this contracts, you can sue people. You can take into court. They're in stone. That's in black and white. As it was mentioned, agreements are made to be broken. And then you go from there. And what's happened, as this guy explained to me, these agreements, and they break these agreements, knowing that there's no penalty at the end, willy-nilly, because we've allowed that to happen, because there's no teeth in these agreements, from what this guy's explaining to me. And that's kind of angering. So when you hear the story of, look, my phone rings 10, 12 times, and they're trying to send me, before I'm off rest, send me to places I'm not qualified to go, and really got into the nitty-gritty of what an engineer, what a conductor does, and how dangerous. It didn't dawn on me that there are serious downgrades that you have to be able to make riding a train. And if you don't know what you're doing, bomb town. And went into some of the nitty-gritty of how they get around regulations, how they load cars so that you don't have to report them for hazmat. Really, again, gaming the system so that they can profit off of, when something bad happens, well, it's somebody else's problem. And the more I thought about it, and the more I talked to this guy, it reminded me of conservatives used to love to beat up on the UAW and on the steelworkers. Because if you go back into the 1970s, and I would guess even the railroad workers as well, because if I remember right, the railroads used to have, guys just hanging out on the back of the caboose. Who knows what they were doing? They were just there. There were 2, 3, 4 of them sometimes, I remember as a kid. But they used to love to beat up on the UAW and the steelworkers for having, guys who were getting paid just to play cards. They would come in and they would sit on the picnic table and they'd play cards. And I'd go, there's a reason that they're there. They're there at the behest of the company. They're there in case. See, when the unions were stronger, they said, look, we're not going to put people's health and safety at risk to be your just-in-time inventory, to be your just-in-time labor. You're going to have someone available. If someone gets sick, if someone has a kid who gets sick and has to go home, you're going to have somebody right there who's going to be able to jump into that assembly line, be able to jump into that steel mill, and keep the things rolling. So what they had is they had extra people. And that was good, for the company, because production didn't stop. It was good for the workers because they had jobs. It was good for the union because it gave some flexibility. It was good. But it was bad for the profit, because for those handful of extra people that they hired, that's less profit for the wealthy. And we can't have that today. And it got me thinking about that, because you don't see that anymore. You don't see reserved labor like you did in the past, where people were paid to just come and just in case. And they would give them some busy work, go sweep in the parking lot, go do something. They were utility people. We don't have that anymore. Now it's, especially on the railroad, we're going to put you on call, and we're going to call you at any time, day or night, and we're going to call you off of your expertise to do other things. And yeah, you'll probably file a grievance, and you maybe get a little extra pay or something for running somebody around, but that's how they run it. And you don't have the best qualified people doing things, and you get inspections pencil whipped through, and you have management who said, don't worry about it, even when they do find something. That's a recipe for disaster on every front. And, when I finished up with this guy, this is one of those things where, he said, look, I've been working all these years, 30 plus years. And if I lost this job, I'm not long till I'm homeless. And everyone on the railroad knows that, and the railroads know that. They know that this is a good job. They know it pays well. They know it's got good benefits. And they're willing to, basically hold people hostage. He said, look, I got 2 kids. I want them to have a better life. I want them to do better. Sadly, in every place you look, things are getting worse. Now, the hope is, out of this tragedy, like the Massey mine disaster, there was some additional regulations. we're going to see something happen here. J.D. Vance, the Republican, Sherrod Brown, the Democrat from Ohio, both of them, they've come forth with this Railway Safety Act of 2023. I don't think it stands a snowball's chance of passing, but it does do some common sense things. It does do something about the weight of these trains and how they're distributed and how they're put together. And if they're going to block railroad crossings and things like that. You're going to have increased fines for safety violations from I think it was $225, the maximum fine, $225,000 up to 1% of their operating cost. It's a big deal. The devices that are supposed to be on the side of the road that are now voluntary, there's going to be mandatory with reporting requirements. Also, an update on regulations that include hazmat. No more of this, well, if you've got 34 cars on a train, you don't have to report it. And if there 20 of them aren't together, you don't have to report it. Every bit of hazmat now has to be reportable. This is a big step in the right direction. Is it the end all be all? No. I think staffing levels, they're going to put staffing levels at 2 people per train. I'm of the mindset minimum 3, preferably 4. But this is a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 5 mile long train. I'm sorry. 2 guys on a 5 mile long train. I'm sorry. That's insane. And what we have is a Republican Party right now. Can't burdensome regulations. Ask those people in East Palestine. Ask them how the burdensome regulations are working out for them. Or the free regulations. Because again, thanks to Donald Trump and his appointees, this is what we got. And I know, but Biden's been Biden. You don't just flip a switch and replace all the horrible. You don't just flip a switch and replace all the regulations that were undone. There's a whole process, a long process. It's like my grandfather always said, any idiot with a hammer can tear down a house. You need a craftsman to build one. Same thing with regulation. Any idiot can tear them down. Now you got to go through the long, arduous process of getting them through. And I got to tell you, I don't think it's going to happen. Even without all the outrage and all of the news and all of the people going, no, we need some. I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm hopeful. That's why you need to be calling your senators. You need to be calling your representatives and saying, look, we need it. We need life-saving regulations. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I go back to the word I used the other day, sophistry. Again, I think an important word for the day in which we are in, given the fact that you've got the F channel and you've got, well, a Republican-led House. Remember, the definition for the word sophistry, the use of fallacious arguments, especially when the intention is to deceive, a suitable or tricky, superficially plausible, but generally fallacious method of reasoning, a false argument. A false argument. A lie. Yeah. I look at Jim Jordan right now. Jim Jordan, my new example of just this. Remember all of this? The whistleblowers were coming, had a bunch of them. They were going to expose all the fraud. They were going to get the FBI. They're going to get all of them. They had whistleblowers from everywhere. There were whistleblowers everywhere. Turns out none of the 3 paid actors that they brought in were actually whistleblowers. And they were just that. They were paid actors. They were people who came from, basically the Trumposphere. They had ties to this Kash Patel and Mark Meadows, and they're not whistleblowers because they didn't actually see anything. They know nothing firsthand. This again is, I think, widening the definition of what a whistleblower is. I read online. That's not helpful. I made up while reading, Facebook on the can. Not really helpful in a congressional testimony. But yet Jim Jordan brought this out. And what's interesting is even other Republicans are kind of going, Jim, it's kind of embarrassing. You promised to bring the goods on this. Because remember, this was the weaponization committee. We were going to see how the Democrats weaponized the FBI, because we're going to bring all these FBI agents out who are going to blow the whistle and blow the top off of things. They were going to open the curtains and show us behind. And what they showed is, again, there really is no depth that Republicans won't stoop to make their political point, to win their argument. I mean, Marjorie Greene the other day, bringing out a poor woman who lost children, accusing Biden of murdering her children when they died during the Trump administration. It's a horrible tragedy. But to turn that and to take that and go, see, we've got this poor woman is suffering because of Joe Biden. And you go, no, that's not true. But this is another one of these moments where you now have these crazy conspiracy theorists posing as whistleblowers. And you have a congressman, a sitting congressman. Isn't there a law about getting people to perjure themselves? Is there something in there? It's just remarkable. But here's the thing, and this is where we have to have better conversations and talk to each other. And I've been saying for a long time that I've lost a lot of conservative friends, and it's because there's some arguments. And I finally came up to why. I was watching Jon Stewart. He had this state senator from Oklahoma, this Nathan Dame, on, and he was interviewing him about loosening gun regulations and banning kids from seeing drag shows, and he did an incredible, it's a master's class in using an argument against someone, because what he was able to do is get this state senator to say what he wanted to say and what he actually believes. And as I've said, this is probably why I've lost a lot of my conservative friends over the years who don't want to talk to me anymore, because I question what they believe. This guy came into this interview totally outgunned, but believing he was right, believing he was on the moral ground. We're going to stop, kids from seeing drag shows. And what it turned into, and Stewart made the right argument, the one that I've been saying for a long time, is, and where Democrats should be living, is in constitutional principles of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Your constitutional rights of free expression, of free speech, of all of these things that conservatives love to say that they love. In fact, they carry that Constitution with them. So they say, but don't actually know what it means or only think it applies to them. And this is where all this gets a little murky and a little difficult. And we're having actual conversation and an actual, a discourse, and then going through a legislative process of compromise and debate, really important. Maybe not having sideshows, maybe not, getting people to come in and pretend to be whistleblowers who are actually just conspiracy theorists. Maybe being honest in what you're presenting. Maybe that's a start, especially if you're a sitting congressman. But I highly suggest people take a look at the Stewart clip, because it really was a master's class in turning an argument and making the right one. Because he turned the whole, well, we're protecting children. Yeah, but you're not going to do anything about, permitting guns or, it was really incredible. And this is where we have to have these conversations around what is reality. Understand, the religious right are the people who believe that they're right. They're moving full head crazy. I look at Iowa. Iowa used to be a good, strong, moderate state. Used to be the common sense, the Midwestern state with common sense. Now it's losing its freak. It's the Florida of the Midwest. Because you now have a number of state house Republicans in Iowa who have now introduced a joint resolution to amend their state constitution to ban same-sex marriage. We're going back and fighting that again. And it all comes around to this, because again, it's about the outrage. It's about the anger. It's about keeping people pitted against each other and afraid of each other. For instance, there's some guy who does a TV show on one of the right-wing crazy channels on like, I think, DirecTV. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he posted a picture of Pete Buttigieg and his husband and the babies. I guess they've adopted babies. And to this guy, this is just the most horrible thing in the world. And I look at that and I go, those kids are probably going to have great opportunities growing up. Good for them. I wish the best for all of them. I don't know how you put yourself in a position to have the kind of hate and the kind of judgmental anger that we see coming out of the people who claim to be right. And what's frustrating to me is our political system, the right is using to punish people who are trying to express themselves, who are trying to live their life, pursue life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, while telling us that they believe in the Constitution. This is the bizarre part in all of this. That these are the folks who are telling us that they're firm constitutionalists. In fact, they've got it in their Twitter bios, while they then go about trying to figure out how to stop everyone from leading their best life. Which, again, very, very weird to me. But I guess not surprising. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. More interest and fun on the Fox front. Fox getting sued by Dominion voting systems. Also, some more probably coming. My next guest, one of them. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. National headlines spread fear of the growing wildcat strikes at Chrysler and Briggs auto plants in Detroit. The wildcats had increased to 35,000 strikers and idled workers at 2 Chrysler plants and 7 Briggs plants. The strike wave started a week earlier at the Dodge main plant in Detroit. 8 of the union's best leaders had been discharged for refusing to go along with a production line speed-up. Briggs management followed Chrysler's union-busting campaign by firing 7 UAW officers at the Mack Avenue plant. 3 days later, Briggs fired another 8 committeemen and stewards, which then provoked the walkout. Company officials and the War Labor Board were outraged at the halt in war production of tanks, B-29 Super Fortresses, anti-aircraft guns, rockets, and trucks. The Michigan legislature introduced a bill to define as a felony any strike participation that violated a labor relations contract. The War Labor Board demanded that both sides meet in Washington to end the walkout. Strike leaders defied the wartime no-strike pledge and ignored the international's threat of disciplinary action. Strikers had the full backing of local UAW presidents. The UAW conceded that management had provoked the wildcatting through indiscriminate firings. Workers argued that if the War Labor Board prioritized production over union busting, they would order the reinstatement of all the discharged leaders. The Flint Labor Council passed a resolution demanding that all CIO and other union representatives resign immediately from the War Labor Board. It considered the board as stacked against labor. Workers at Chrysler and Briggs would soon end their walkout with guarantees of arbitration for reinstatement of the fired militants.
Stuff happens, right? I mean, who could have thought that in these modern times of digital monitoring of everything, something as massive as a freight train could become a toxic fireball rolling undetected and unslowed into an Ohio town? But a Norfolk Southern train did just that, derailing in East Palestine and contaminating the air, water, land, and families with tons of cancer-causing chemicals. Gosh, exclaimed Norfolk Southern. Gosh, exclaimed the Ohio governor. Gosh, exclaimed the U.S. Transportation Chief. Gosh, exclaimed the GOP chair of the Rail Transportation Committee. This is a terrible, unexpected accident, and we're all appalled by it. Only, all of these officials knew full well that this disaster would happen, though they didn't know exactly where. Indeed, far from unexpected, there are more than 1,000 preventable train derailments in the U.S. every year. Norfolk Southern had another one only days after the one in Ohio. And these things don't just happen. They're caused by the profiteering greed of the monopolistic industry's top executives and rich investors. While Norfolk's boardroom elites have been pocketing record profits in recent years, they've used armies of lobbyists and multi-million-dollar political donations to kill safety protections that would prevent such a disastrous record. To cut costs and jack up profits, railroad bosses have rigged the rules to run trains that are absurdly long, go too fast, carry undisclosed toxics in weak tanker cars, have no fire detectors, use outmoded braking systems, and have as few as one crew member on board. One. This is Jim Hightower saying Norfolk's derailed train was made to derail. It pulled 149 cars stretching nearly 2 miles down the track, and it was ill-equipped to detect fires and other problems. This disaster was not an accident. It was mandated by the corporate and government officials now professing outrage.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we're finding out an awful lot because of this Dominion lawsuit against Fox. And I've been saying for a while, it would be great to see, well, a line of people doing what Dominion has done. And that whole discovery thing, that's the fun part. Getting those back channel conversations and what we found out during this Dominion suit so far, what's been leaked, what's been put out so far is all of the people who are the talking heads are basically mocking the audience for being stupid. Because they know what it is. It's not about red or blue. It really is, like Rupert Murdoch said, about green. But the thing is, they cause real damage, and real damage to individuals, not just a government that they despise, but to people. And one of those folks is my next guest. Who's been on the show a couple of times before. Her name's Nina Jankowicz. She's the author of How to Lose the Information War and How to Be a Woman Online. You may remember her as the former executive director of the really short-lived Disinformation Governance Board that Fox celebrated taking down. Nina, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick.
So let's get right to the beginning of this. I understand you are about to or have already filed a lawsuit against this. Why?
So I haven't filed the lawsuit yet. I'm actually seeking to crowdfund part of the legal fees for my suit against Fox, as well as some of the suits that I've had to take on and lawyers I've had to hire as a result of Fox lies. But essentially, Rick, I took a job to serve my country in my area of expertise as the executive director of the Disinformation Governance Board at DHS, which was just an intradepartmental working group to bring to bear best practices in countering disinformation in this sprawling government agency. The right wing and some folks on the very far left wing, I have to say, completely blew it out of proportion. As a result of their lies about what the board was supposed to do. They called it a ministry of truth, called me President Biden's chief censor. Again, the board had no ability or authority to censor, to arbitrate speech whatsoever. My life has been irrevocably changed. I have security concerns. I had to take out a restraining order against one of my stalkers. This was all while I was in the very late stages of my first pregnancy and then the newborn period and infancy period with my son. I get recognized on the street now by people who wish me harm. I get, torrents of abuse. And I'm not just talking about mean tweets. I'm talking about threats. Somebody today, after, some conservative influencers started talking about my crowdfunding campaign, said that everything would be better if I had a bullet in my head. Like, that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. It's not just mean words online, right? And this is all because Fox lied about me literally hundreds of times. They completely manufactured things that they said that I said. They took my past statements completely out of context. They took manipulated videos that internet trolls had created of me and presented them as if they were facts. And it's not that I'm trying to silence anyone doing amazing journalism. That is not the case. I'm happy for Fox or anybody else to do real reporting on me, the board, whatever. But the fact is, they lied about me hundreds of times, and it took me a little while, given everything that was happening in my life, to kind of comb through these statements and look at what was being said. But when I see it, there's clearly, the threshold being met of actual malice or reckless disregard, which is what you have to meet as a public figure to launch one of these cases. And I just, I worry about what happens with our democracy, right? When people are being threatened in this way as a result of news coverage, and we kind of just shrug and say that that's normal. That's not okay, and it keeps people out of public service, and it changes how our democracy operates. And the law exists exactly for this purpose. So that's why I decided to come to this conclusion and bring the lawsuit.
And the other part of it is it was coordinated. I mean, I think that's an important part of this, because it was all of the Fox talking heads calling you the disinformation czar, claiming that you're editing people's speech, called you a conspiracy theorist, a useful idiot, far left lunatic, unhinged, scary. One guy even said that when they closed down the Disinformation Governance Board, that they love political scalps.
Yeah.
I mean, so they attacked you and attacked you often, and then celebrated in public out loud that we got her scalp. See, that's scary stuff. There's supposed to be news. What happened to fair and balanced?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to understand people who look at what happened to me and celebrate it. And that's exactly what Fox did. The video that I have on my crowdfunding page ends with Jesse Waters asking one of his guests, do you feel sorry for what he calls me, the disinformation czarist? And his guest kind of smirks and says, I confess I don't. And what really strikes me is that this guy, his guest, has a picture of a young woman. I don't know if it's his wife or his daughter in the background of his shot. He's zooming in from his home, as most people have been doing over the past couple of years. And I wonder how he'd feel if that woman were the target of the sort of threats that I've gotten. I doubt that he'd be very happy about that, and I think he'd be seeking justice for whomever that woman is in his life. And I think we all have to think that way, right? This isn't something normal. This isn't something that anybody should wish on anybody else. I wouldn't wish this on any of the Fox celebrities. One woman had said something like, she's mad about a couple of mean tweets. She can dish it, but she can't take it. First of all, I don't know what she means. Dish it. I'm not dishing anything out. I don't abuse people online. In fact, I'm an advocate for people to treat each other civilly online. And then another one of the hosts said, she couldn't be a Fox News host. And I'm upset that they get that stuff too. Like, our country is sick and the way that we're operating is sick, but I think they need to recognize their role in that. And Fox News is absolutely one of the biggest purveyors of vitriol. I can absolutely track every time I'm on Fox News because I get a wave of harassment coming into my inbox. And it's not just, again, mean tweets. It is threats. It is direct messages to my inbox, my Facebook messages. People have called my mother. They've sought information about the rest of my family. The guy I got a restraining order against was curious about whether my son actually existed because I hadn't posted a picture of him online. I wonder why I hadn't posted a picture of him online, right? Yeah. It's because I don't want people to be using him as a target. And that's the reality of life right now. And it's not just me that it's happened to. If you look at election workers across the country since 2020, if you look at, school board members, this is becoming the norm. And I think it is absolutely disgusting.
Can you imagine, and you're talking about your child, can you imagine some of these idiots putting the crosshairs on your child? I mean, this is what these people do. I mean, just a story from Michigan that you had, some lunatic going after Dana Nessel. I mean, you have these stories of the kind of vitriol that you're talking about coming from these right-wing outlets. So when you look at the F channel, you are an expert in cyber warfare. You're an expert in disinformation, someone I look to for guidance on a lot of this stuff. Isn't Fox News, isn't that disinformation at its height? I mean, shouldn't we be doing something about that? Look, I'm not against, I'm in no way, shape, or form against the press, but they're not the press. These seem like hit people.
Well, there was even a lawsuit recently in which somebody was trying to sue Tucker Carlson for defamation, and they lost the suit because the conclusion was that Tucker Carlson was an entertainer, not a journalist. But of course, people treat Tucker and many of the other Fox News hosts as if they are journalists and the words that they speak are the gospel truth, when in reality, what we know from the Dominion suit is that they are not the gospel truth, and that many of the Fox News hosts are lying deliberately to their audience for profit. And the definition of disinformation is false or misleading information spread with malign intent. And I think profit can certainly be a malign intent. And I hope these lawsuits continue to shine a light on what it is that Fox is doing. The problem, of course, is that I think even when confronted with the facts, many people don't want to hear the truth. So the video that I put together, with the help of a friend, I think shows exactly what they did and shows the lies that they've told about me. And what was interesting to me as the campaign started to pick up steam over the past couple of hours, the abuse that I've been getting on Twitter is, I would say, a majority of the abusive messages that I've gotten in the past, 12 hours or so have been based on the lies that Fox told about me. So it's like, even when they're confronted with the truth, these lies that have been seeded by the network are still the thing that kind of the thing that is really the governing rule in their heads. And it's really sad to me. And one of the things, you said, can I imagine them putting the crosshairs on my kid? Yeah, I can. It's really scary to me, especially having been recognized now out in public a couple of times. Luckily, my kid wasn't with me, but I don't want him to have to deal with any of this. And I think it's kind of sick that people's responses, well, you should just go, and there were a couple people who said this today, you should just fade away from the public, like just go spend time with your son then. I'm sorry, I have a right to use my voice, my First Amendment rights, right? I have a right to speak out and do the work that I've done for almost a decade now. I have a right to contribute to the discourse in my country, and I'm not going to let these people take it away from me just because they've been lied to and because they think they can scare me. It is absolutely scary, but I'm not gonna cede that ground to them. And when people are messaging me, it's often, on Facebook in particular, older folks who often have, their grandkids or their dogs in their Facebook profile pictures. So sometimes when I'm feeling, kind of magnanimous, I'll message them and say, hey, like, cute dog, cute grandkid. I just had, my first kid. Just wanted to let you know that there is a person behind the profile. I think a lot of people forget that. And certainly Fox has demonized me and so many others to such a degree that people do forget that. I'm a character to them, but I want to remind everybody that I'm a human being.
No, and good on you for taking this on, because I think it's really important. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Nina Jankowicz. She's the author of How to Lose the Information War and How to Be a Woman Online. She's also seeking there's a GoFundMe account out there to raise funds to take on Fox, something that I am going to donate to. I hope others will, because most certainly this is something that we have to. We've got to bring news back to our news. You brought up a moment ago that Tucker said that he's an entertainer, he's not news. Does this not then, isn't this the grounds to say, well, you're not protected by the First Amendment? You're now open to, defamation and other things in ways that the press, protected under the First Amendment, may not be. I'm curious your thoughts.
Oh, well, so I'm not a legal scholar, and I'm going to leave it to lawyers to kind of argue the case for me, but I wouldn't be suing Tucker directly. It would be a case against Fox, because there was clearly, as you said before, coordination amongst their hosts, their talking heads, their producers, even the guests that they brought in. And those talking points were circulated across the entire network. So I think the fault in that case, as I understand it, was that it was directly against Tucker rather than the network. And the network clearly doesn't always have control over its hosts, as we've seen with the Dominion lawsuit. And when it comes to entertainment, I think a lot of people can say, oh, it's just parody. We see that protected on Twitter. Even Elon Musk's Twitter, we see parody protected to a certain degree. And so people can get away when they say it's just a joke. But the fact stands that in our extremely polarized environment, in which people are radicalized to violence by the media and by the online environment that they exist in, or kind of that merges for them, I think there's a responsibility that entertainers, that media need to take, and understand that their words have consequences. And I have to say too, of course you can't sue members of Congress for the things that they say in the course of their duties, but members of Congress played a large role in this as well, in laundering these theories, conspiracy theories and lies about me. And I think we really need to hold our elected officials accountable as well. We need our elected officials to be the beacons of truth and paragons of truth that we hope ourselves to be. I think my dog has just joined our podcast here.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we've been talking about the word sophistry for the last couple of days. You look at the thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene did with that poor woman who lost her children, saying that Joe Biden did this, when the reality is it happened before Biden was president. You see Jim Jordan putting on this display of, we've got all these FBI agents, these whistleblowers, and you find out they're all paid shills. It's political theater. So the question that I have, you as a cyber expert, as a disinformation expert, how's the average citizen wade through what is clearly BS? And we're just inundated with this horrible, unconscionable nonsense put forth by people who don't care about democracy. They don't care about right or wrong. They care about pure power. And as I think Rupert Murdoch has the phrase of the ages. It's not about red or blue. It's about green.
Yeah.
How
shocking was that?
How do we wade through that?
I mean, so this is where, we have to hope that the rest of the press that is still doing good work continues to survive. So I'm going to give kind of a groan-worthy answer here, but we need to continue to invest in our media, whether that means, making, having a subscription to the media outlets that you listen to, that you read, or watch, donating to your local PBS or NPR station. All of that's so important, because there is still real journalism in this country. I cut my teeth in the post-Soviet world, especially in Russia. And the reason that what we see in Russia happening right now, where Russians are questioning the reality of the war in Ukraine, despite the pictures that they're being shown. They say, these are made up, or they're fabricated, whatever, they're from other wars. That is because of the grip that Putin has on the media system in Russia, and the fact that dissent is not tolerated. And we still have dissent, we still have criticism, and we need to preserve that. And the media is a really, really big part of that. So that's why I think it's all very ironic, right? That people think I was a giant censor. I'm one of the biggest advocates for free expression and free media that you'll ever find on the face of the planet. And I'll defend the people who are really in harm's way in places like Russia, like Belarus. And yet, I've been made out to be this fascist. It's just hilarious. Anyway, day. That's what we need to do. People need to support your show and other shows like it where we're committed to telling the truth.
But we live in a world where nothing can be true if everything's false, or or however you want to phrase that. And I look at what they want to do down in Florida. They want anyone who is going to write about DeSantis or any of the legislature, any bloggers are going to have to register with the state.
Yeah.
I mean, this sounds Soviet-esque. Scary.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I saw that last night, I tweeted right away, because these are the types of legislation that I've written about before, long before I joined DHS, where, people who were seeking to quote unquote counter disinformation in less than democratic societies would have this sort of registration for the press. And it's really just a way to keep a leash on journalists, even if you're calling it bloggers. I mean, think about some of the more powerful, Substack newsletters that we see these days that have hundreds of thousands or even millions of subscribers. Those would be considered blogs, and they'd have to register, and they'd have kind of this check on them. And that's not the way that freedom of the press is supposed to work in the United States of America. And I had people in my replies saying, oh, this is just so that we can see where the funding comes from. Frankly, that's not the way that the press works in the United States of America either. Where does the funding come from for a lot of the cable news networks? Yes, we see, commercials, but they've got funding coming from big donors, from, vested interests as well. And they're not required to disclose those to anybody. So I think this law hopefully won't get passed. I hope there will be enough outrage that it won't get passed. And it's a great time for anybody in Florida to write to their representatives and tell them that they oppose it.
Yeah, but if they can spin it in a way that we're going after the woke and going to make the libtards cry, who knows? Last question I've got for you. How can we help? What can folks do? Where do we go? Because I know everybody I know thrilled that you're doing this. How can we help?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support. So if you can donate, every penny counts. I would love your support in that way, but also sharing the fundraiser really matters as well. Getting it to people out there, like-minded folks who think that this is an important cause. So the link is kind of long, but you can go to my Twitter, which is Wikipedia, WICZIPEDIA, Wikipedia, or just search Nina Jankowicz on Twitter. You will find it. I bet if you search Nina Jankowicz GoFundMe, you'll see the link as well. But any support you can give in terms of sharing it to your friends, family who would be interested in it, I would really, really support that. Thank you so much.
Nina, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and share some more as this goes on. Most certainly want to help, so I want to make sure that you come back early and often.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick. Have a good night.
Thanks so much, Nina Jankowicz. Again, this is another one of those things. If you can chip in, by all means, got to reclaim our news. Just my thoughts. Want to hear yours? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1893. That was the day that William Greene, longtime president of the American Federation of Labor, was born in Coshocton, Ohio. Greene's family were English and Welsh immigrant miners. He entered the mines at the age of 16. Before he was 20, he had become secretary of the Coshocton Progressive Miners Union. That local would eventually join the United Mine Workers of America. By 1906, Greene had risen to lead the Ohio chapter of the UMWA. Less than 2 decades later, when longtime leader of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, died, Greene was named his successor. Greene believed in union management cooperation. He thought labor could win more gains at the table with management than they could standing in opposition. Greene helped secure some major legislative victories for labor, including the 1935 National Labor Relations Act, which strengthened collective bargaining rights. He also supported the Fair Labor Standards Act, which established the 40-hour workweek and the minimum wage. His tenure at the helm of the AFL was during some of the most tumultuous years in U.S. labor history. This was an era of massive sit-down strikes and organizing drives for workers in industries like steel, meatpacking, and the auto industry. Green supported organizing industrial workers, but the AFL-L's leadership at the time, by and large, favored skilled trade labor. Increasingly, Green clashed with UMWA President John L. Lewis over the question of industrial unions. This led to a split in the labor movement and the formation of the separate Congress of Industrial Organizations. Green continued to lead the AFL until his death in 1952. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Yeah, I can't imagine what she has gone through, because if you watch some of the clips that have come out around, and I remember when they put her forth as the executive director of this disinformation governance board, and the idea was just to point out, what kind of, if you pay attention to social media, you can see it. You can see the wave of trolls and the troll farms doing what they do. Because, sometimes I'll throw something out and you'll see, Jimmy 15 letters and numbers after his name with no followers, commenting the same thing that the same 15 other ones that look just like them do. Because it's what they do. It's these attacks, because it's to get people who are just watching and reading this stuff to think, oh, hey, there's someone who thinks like I do, or moreover, shaping people's thoughts. So am I surprised that this woman's getting threats? Am I surprised, especially this woman? Because I get threats too, but not as many as I would, I believe, if I were a woman. Because it's a lot harder to intimidate me than it is a woman with a child. But over at the F channel, they didn't seem to care. And to have that smirky little snot, saying, well, we got their scalp. We love scalps. That is not media. And again, this, it's information. Then stop with the fair and balanced news. If we're to move forward as a country, and look, we're heading towards dangerous times. Understand, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, they are all running disinformation campaigns. And we're easily divided because we're such a diverse country. We're such a large country. We're such a diverse country with different ethnicities and different belief structures. And look, some that maybe I don't agree with, some that you don't agree with. But we have this wonderful thing called the Constitution that guarantees our rights to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And I remember in 8th grade learning about this. I remember when Mr. Petrus stood up in front of the room and explained this concept. I still remember it to this day. That each of us have this right to pursue our best life, our path. And as long as our rights don't infringe on someone else's, we can do what we want. The government won't stop us. And yet I come to this moment in time and I see wow. The kind of vitriol and look, I've talked to a number of people, especially during the Trump years, who went through the doxing and went through all of the assaults on social media. And look, I don't spend a lot of time reading the comments on social media. I don't, because if it's someone I know, if someone that follows me, I know who they are, then yeah, I'll interact. But for the trolls, I don't deal with the trolls because they're just trying to get a rise. They're just trying to influence others and try and bait you into an argument so that they can use it to try and convince others that they're right. When the reality is, it's not even about right or wrong. It's about dividing us even further. Anyway, we'll see how Nina does. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.
Well, the historic string of storms drenched the state and have many wondering whether our drought could soon be over.
Nope. Despite a series of major storms, California's historic drought continues.
Norfolk Southern and the other freight rail companies need to stop fighting us.
Nope. Railroad industry already fighting new safety regulations in the wake of the Ohio derailment disaster. Plus,
record warmth across several states in the U.S. has caused trees and plants to bloom weeks ahead of schedule.
Bizarre weather continues as parts of U.S. see earliest spring conditions on record.
Earliest spring, it's freezing out here in California. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Weather Channel.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Dizzy Doyen, I don't know what you global warming people did, but whatever you're doing, it must be working because it is freezing out here in California.
Well, I'm sorry that you don't like the cold weather.
I don't like it one bit. As a matter of fact, I've been in Southern California 30 years. It has never been this cold. So whatever you did, knock it off.
Okay. Well, on to our top story. A string of major atmospheric rivers have nearly filled several of California's major reservoirs, and a couple of rare blizzards have helped push California's snowpack to nearly twice its normal levels. The unexpected bounty of water amid the deepest drought in the state in 1,200 years has prompted state and federal water managers to increase their expected allocation of water to the state's agriculture industry in 2023.
Good news.
However, experts say it will take more than a series of storms to make up for years of deficits.
No.
Here's Andrew Schwartz of the UC Berkeley Snow Lab.
We've gone from extreme and exceptional to kind of a moderate status, and that continues to shrink. We're not at a point yet where we can declare all of our drought over. We need to be able to conserve water and keep moving forward as though we don't have plenty of water. And every drop saved now will be available when we do have a shortage.
And there's also the danger that spring heat waves will trigger a fast melt of the snowpack, and that could cause those reservoirs to overflow, bringing a whole different set of problems. Hydrology experts warn that California and other western states continue to use more water than nature provides, especially as climate change is fueling a long-term drying trend.
Isn't that just like you? We get all of this rain after this longest ever drought, and you're still complaining about it.
And spring has already sprung in the U.S. thanks to a much warmer than normal winter.
Not here.
With scientists reporting early budding of flowers and trees in numerous locations, calling it, quote, another sign of climate change playing out in real time. Parts of Texas, Arkansas, Ohio, Maryland, and New York are all reporting their earliest spring conditions on record. Washington, D.C.'s iconic cherry trees are already starting to bloom. The date for peak bloom is likely to be among the earliest in history this year for the annual Cherry Blossom Festival on March 20th. That's due in part to the hard work of festival sponsor Chevron, whose profits doubled last year.
Oh, man.
Since 1970, spring has warmed in virtually all of the hundreds of U.S. locations that were analyzed by climate data firm Climate Central. The Southwest has experienced the largest increase. Average spring temperatures are 6 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer in the Southwest than in the 1970s. And spring is not only warming, but arriving earlier, stressing water supplies in the West and extending the allergy season across the country.
Well, that's nothing to sneeze at.
In the Ohio train derailment disaster, House Democrats on Tuesday unveiled a bill to tighten regulations for trains transporting hazardous materials, but The Lever reports that the rail industry is already fighting new safety rules announced by Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg last week. The industry's main lobbying group, the Association of American Railroads, this week said the government should delay the rulemaking process until after all investigations of the derailment are completed and demanded that any new regulations only, quote, directly address the cause of this particular accident and nothing else. And you may see a new ad campaign by the Railroad Lobby Group burnishing its image to stave off accountability through regulations.
Well, don't worry about that. The Republicans are really upset about what happened in Ohio. I'm sure they're going to make sure that railroad industry gets regulated like it should be.
In a related note, the Ohio train derailment disaster has also intensified efforts by environmental groups to halt a Trump administration rule that was pushed by the railroad industry, allowing the bulk transport of explosive liquefied natural gas by rail.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Finally, a bit of good news. The massive city of Tokyo, Japan will make rooftop solar panels mandatory for all new homes starting in 2025.
I like it. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I'm still looking at the pictures of CPAC and going, there's literally no one there. Literally no one there. In fact, Don Jr. gave a speech to a handful of people, and my first thought was, I'll bet you Daddy's going to mock him tomorrow. I'll bet you it's going to happen. I'll bet you Trump mocks his own kid tomorrow for not bringing the energy or bringing anyone in there. No, I can't even talk about the insanity and the idiocy that he talked about because nobody else heard it, so why amplify it? But here to share some thoughts and some fun about the week that was, one of my favorite people in the whole world, Patty Vasquez. She's a comedian, policy advisor, activist, former candidate for House in Illinois, also an incredible radio host, heard on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, heard 5 to 7 p.m. daily. With kind words, her website, if you want to look out more. Patty, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me. And I got to have you on soon again, too, because we do need to do these conversations and have perspectives from outside sort of our bubble a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, I love doing your show. I love having you on because it's important to, again, bang back and forth on some of the insanity that we see. CPAC is the biggest joke of the week. It's one of those things, if Marjorie Taylor Greene goes on a anti-Semitic rant, would anybody hear it?
I love those long shots all the networks had, and as soon as they would cut to them, they try to zoom in to go past all the empty chairs to whoever was speaking on stage. It was fabulous.
But here's the thing: they wouldn't. There's nobody there, but they wouldn't let Nick Fuentes in.
Yeah. That's got to burn a little bit, don't you think? What? I'm one of you. Let me in. No, you're too controversial for us.
No, I'm not going there. I'm thinking the sponsorship check bounced.
That's interesting.
Because look, he had a private dinner with Trump. Trump is the center of their fundraising. Without him, nobody bothers to come at all. Because evidently, Trump claims that tomorrow is sold out. Now I gotta wonder if they're bussing homeless people in or something and giving free Trump water or something, vintage Trump water. But
they might. Is Kim giving? We're gonna get to Kim and her little deal on there because it cracks me up.
Have you seen her?
Oh my God, the eyelashes!
Oh my
I thought
God,
they had teleprompters on her eyelashes so she could read them better because she was like, "I am here selling this wonderful product that you should buy to support us."
Selling gold. Kim's medals, selling gold at CPAC.
Yeah. For liberty. No, it's for liberty. It's gold for liberty.
Here, let me fleece you for liberty.
Yes, exactly. That's all they know how to do is fleece people for liberty.
My question was, and I haven't seen it, and I've asked a couple people I know who are there to see if they brought that. You remember that stupid gold Trump, that big golden Trump thing that was made in Mexico?
Yes.
I want to know if that's there, or did they melt that down and make little ones?
Wasn't there something in the Bible about thou shalt not idol, false idols?
So you listened last night then? Okay.
No. Yes. Yeah. Totally. Yes. What? Yeah, that's the whole thing. Idolatry. This is what makes me crazy. Is all the things that they say they embrace, whether it's the flag, the Constitution, or the Bible, they don't. It means nothing to them except for the grift. That's it.
Oh, it's all about the grift, and that's the weird thing is even the people. I tell my friends who have really, literally bought the hat and the shirt and the flag and the bumper stickers. I go, how much do you think you've been fleeced over the years by these grifters who don't care about you? And thank you, Rupert Murdoch, for at least being honest and giving me the bumper sticker of the ages who's honest. It's not about red or blue. It's about green. It's about fleecing the flock. It's about getting these idiots to part with their money and enrich me.
Yeah, and they're willing to do it. They don't hesitate. They are so, I remember when I was younger and seeing people who like believed in something so strongly. I remember I wish I could believe that hard in something, but I'm like, I kind of like to treat people well and let that guide me rather than the one, like whatever it is, whether it's money or religion or, patriotism. It's like, if you do the right thing, then you're going in the right direction in all those ways, making money maybe, or, serving God and being a patriot.
See, my problem has always been extreme anything is bad for you.
Yes.
It's like the Keith Richards' advice to his kid: make sure drugs aren't the only thing in your life. It's kind of that. Make sure that you've got something else to fall back on. Maybe have some other interests. Maybe be less crazy and less extreme on one thing, and kind of be well-rounded. That's always been my thought. Be sane.
But then you wouldn't be a conservative because you can't take in any new information. Whatever you have is what it has to be, and anything that challenges that is a threat to your own identity. Yeah. And I think that's where it comes from.
No, a threat to my own identity. That's a perfect way of putting it, because there's a lot of things that I personally wouldn't do. That God bless you. You want to go do it? God bless you. Knock yourself out. And I look at this Jon Stewart interview, which I think is a master's class on, really, simply a master's class with this state senator from Oklahoma who's writing the law and we're banning drag shows. And it was a perfect way that he flipped it around, going, but you're going to ban these drag shows that kills no one, but those guns, we want more of them.
Yeah. And literally actually killed drag performers in Colorado. I mean, they're directing all this hatred towards people who are expressing themselves. The drag queens reading at story time has killed 0 children.
Yeah.
And he was great about that. The number one threat to children are guns. And that guy still says, we need more guns.
More guns.
To be safer. Is that what you're saying? So when a cops show up at a domestic violence situation, you're hoping those cops should hope that there are more guns in that house so that they're safer? Yeah.
I love that he asked the question, at what point do we become safer? How many more guns do we need? Is it 1 billion guns? And look, I'm not a gun grabber. I've got a gun, not too far from me here. But I do think Stewart made the right point. People register to vote, and the guy made the point for him.
Yes. I love how he was like, what do you got to do to vote? Just say it. What do you got? Register. Right? But he tried flipping. He's like, no, but what about 17-year-olds? Isn't that no, that's not what we're saying. We already agree that there should be some regulation to it. And I was wondering if John wanted to go with the well-regulated militia, but he's like, all right, we'll leave that alone.
Yeah, no, it's a master's class on having a discussion. And I think this is the reason that conservatives no longer want to have discussions, or what's left of conservatives. I remember honest conservatives who held principles and believed in institutions and all of that stuff from way back in the 2014s. Way back then.
See, they were such quaint times. Remember the good old days?
Ah, yes.
Remember when who was the guy that would always cry with the deep tan?
Oh, Boehner. John Boehner.
Yeah. Just saying. Remember the good old days? The good old days of Obama's not. We're not going to let Obama get anything done and have a Supreme Court job. Those were the good old days of not having a Supreme Court appointment. It was really.
But it's the hypocrites that have taken over. I mean, what's funny is you look at Tennessee that, is now banning drag shows, and their governor did what?
Yes, he just in drag.
And look, I got to give him credit. My wife pointed it out, said, look, he looked pretty good in it.
He did. He had the legs for it, 100%.
Yeah. And then there's the guy in Texas who wrote the bill. He's skipping through the park in a black sequin gown.
Yep. It's hilarious. But the children, they're a threat to children.
So then it comes back to this position that my mind goes to, because I look at Florida now. You got Ron DeSantis who's going after Disney because Disney's woke, because everything bad now is going to be woke. This guy Ron Perry, I guess his name is. He's a pastor and the CEO of the Gathering Christian ministry. They focus their outreach on men. Evidently, he's going to be one of the people on this board to oversee Disney. And it's his belief, and this is the problem with believers, that birth control causes men, because you pee the birth control out, you women, you evil women, and somehow men drink water, tap water, and there's birth control in the tap water, and it makes men gay.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the South Park underpants prophet.
Yeah. It's the pee in the water that's doing it. Every gay man, every gay woman says that if it wasn't for that pesky water, right?
But here's the thing.
I thought it tasted a little salty. What?
Oh, well, that's the Sandy water. No, but here's the thing, and this is what gets me. The people who are preaching this stuff, the people who keep bringing this stuff up, the people who are, it's all that's on their mind. It's almost like they've fetishized, this stuff. These are the people who are doing this stuff. The people. Yes. I told this story the other day. Maybe you remember this when McCain ran for president. There was a guy who was the head in Florida, the head of the McCain for president. He was a state senator. He put forth a piece of legislation making it a felony for men to solicit sex in a men's room, like in a park. So he was going to make this a felony, $1,000 fine, all kinds of horrible stuff, only to find out that it was raining one day, so he ran into a men's bathroom, and there was a really large black man there, and he was so afraid of the thunder and the giant black man that he offered to because that's what you do when you're afraid.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, not for nothing, but could we? Oh my God. No, I don't remember that story.
Oh, it's what his last name was Allen. I think Bob Allen was his name, if I remember right.
Wow.
But it was one of those things where you go, all of these people who are, the pastors who are on the anti-gay rants, who you find with a rubber suit on with a rubber thing jammed up.
Yeah. 100%.
How about we just live in a society where people live their best lives and mind their own freaking business? My grandfather always said, "Don't worry about me, worry about yourself." Maybe that could be our motto. I
think that would, mind your own business and use that ball gag if you want. That's on you, man.
Use that ball gag. That's a bumper sticker. Use that ball gag if you want.
Yeah. Actually, I would prefer if more people in Florida did, but that's just me.
Not my thing, but hey,
hey.
It's like the guy I talked about the other night, a guy much bigger than me, and I'm not a small guy, much bigger than me, a giant beard, you could barely see his face, was probably 6'5", 6'6", 400 pounds if he was an ounce. Nice moo-moo of a sundress, with a floppy white hat, with a dainty little little purse over his arm, with dirty work boots.
Oh, see, that's a thing that sometimes I'm like, can we just finish the outfit? That's all. I don't have any criticism of you wearing the dress. It's just, let's pull it together in the end. You copped out at the end.
He probably had a 15-foot. I doubt you're going to find size 15 pumps anywhere.
Oh yeah, Yeah, it's probably a custom made situation.
Yeah, no.
But still, a pair of Doc Martens would go with a nice sundress.
All right.
You don't need construction boots.
But I remember going, I said, look, I saw him. It shocked me. I kind of giggled. I'm like, good on you, buddy. And went out about my day.
Living his best life.
Exactly. Don't care. It was just one of those things at Home Depot. It was wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. And that's what I think it all comes from. Like everyone in there, the people who do these things that want to like prohibit people from living their best lives, all they're thinking is, that's not how I would do it. Good, then don't do it.
Exactly.
That's it.
It's like, what is it? Iowa now is about ready to try and put a constitutional amendment on to ban same-sex marriage. There's a simple solution to this, and I've been saying it for years. If a guy came up to me and said, Rick, I think a lot of you, you're a nice guy, I'd like to marry you, I would say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the offer. Very nice of you. Glad you didn't hit me in the head with a brick. But no, I'll pass.
Yeah. If you don't like gay marriage, don't get gay married. It's easy.
And it's the same thing with abortion. I mean, it's the same thing there.
Hmm?
You're against it? Don't do it.
Exactly. That's you and your God. And and now it's just gotten to the point, I mean, the absurdity of it is really women who are, some women who wanted to get pregnant and find themselves in a situation where the fetus isn't viable, is already not having a heartbeat, and they can't seek medical help because the doctors are afraid of being persecuted and prosecuted. And they risk not being able to have a baby in the future and their own health. If they develop an infection, they could die. So it's
no, we're in scary times. Look, I've got 2 daughters. I worry about their future because we've got these zealots.
Yeah.
And this is, all fun and games aside, we've got these zealots in positions of power who want to move us back to an idealized version of the 50s that may never have been, but they want the power and control to dictate what my daughters can do. Yeah. And that's frightening to me.
It really is. I never thought that I would say that my state is a place where we're safe harbor right now for now. If things change, this is why we have to make sure that we're diligent, informed, and engaged heading into 24, because this is very perilous. The thing is, don't you think, Rick, is that we bought them hook, line, and sinker? We let them placate us with, we're not going to do anything. It's the law of the land. It's settled precedent. A lot of us didn't believe that, but it was enough for us to go, okay, all right, fine. Have your 3 appointments. We'll just be over here. It's fine.
Stupid Democrats.
Yeah.
No, I blame Democrats for this.
I do too.
They should have inculcated it in law a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Should have been this long.
Yeah.
Like you guys did this past election cycle, passed that workers' rights bill. That should be happening in states all across this country. I'm still waiting on Michigan. What the hell is Michigan waiting so long to repeal no rights at work? It should have been up and down by now.
Well, but the thing is that it's the language, right? At least we finally did. Like, fair tax didn't work in 2020, and it should have, which was a graduated tax. But I mean, usually Republicans are masterful at the language of twisting things and the messaging. Because right to work state. Well, I would love to have the right to work, right? That seems people. I mean, if they're fed the lies and they believe it, and we saw what Rupert Murdoch said, they couldn't tell the truth because then they would lose followers and viewers. Yeah, it comes back to the money.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and again, you look at this abortion issue, and you're right. There were people who go, no, I looked into his soul, and he wouldn't. Yeah. Susan Collins. Now you've got South Carolina that's introduced. They've now introduced a bill. Again, this wasn't going to happen. They promised. No, just about Roe.
No,
just about Roe. They've now introduced a bill that's going to allow women to be executed for having an abortion. We're now going to kill you.
Yep. The right to life crew wants to exterminate you if you don't follow their rules. And I asked people this years ago. I used to have a radio show on another station, and I would ask callers it was a fairly conservative station, which may be part of the reason why I was phased out. But I would ask people, do you think that women should be imprisoned for having an abortion? Should they face execution? And they're like, no, of course not. But I just don't want them to do it. Okay, you can want them to not do it. It's none of your business. But here we are. Yeah. And are they going to give every fetus a social security number? How else is a citizen a citizen?
Rick Santorum would.
Yeah. All right.
No, I mean, I'm just saying. You've got these people who I'm waiting for them to, every sperm is sacred, the Monty Python thing. I'm waiting for that. Because men, they're coming for you next. Trust me.
Yeah, they're gonna be collecting soggy socks all over the country. Is that it? Sorry, is that too much?
No. That's. I've been saying that for a long time. Eventually, they're going to get down to that level because it never stops. It never stops. But the reason I bring this up is, the sad reality is you've got these people, these extremists, who it's never going to end. And I was saying, several weeks ago that the crazies they're organizing. They're organizing around this idea that they're going to be protesting out in front of pharmacies this summer. And it looks like Walgreens has already blinked. They're going to, because we can't sell this pill. No, these women are going to get this pill, and it's going to be bad. It's going to get in the water and turn us gay. You just wait.
Well, I will say Walgreens bowing to them is going to be interesting because Governor Rauner, he was let's not get started, but Governor Pritzker has called for a meeting with them, which is going to be interesting because here's the thing. There might be 20 red states that want them to do this, and maybe they're threatening them, and, we're going to withdraw contracts. Guess where most people live? In urban areas. We have bigger populations. Yep. I'm ready to go shopping somewhere else. I'm fine with that. But Pritzker's gonna have a meeting with them, and my guess is this is where it gets a little exciting for me, where our governor's gonna play hardball right back.
Yeah, they must live on the corner of stupid and crazy. Just saying. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Patty Vasquez, comedian, policy advisor, activist, former candidate for House there in Illinois, and one of my favorite radio hosts, heard on WCPT AM 820 weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. You can check out her website, withkindwords.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. I want to get your thoughts on the whole Fox thing before I let you go. Sure. Kellyanne Conway was on with Hannity. And she looked directly into the camera and said, how many times have you been lied to by people whose job it is to tell you the truth in the media, all in the service of getting the president? And she did this with a straight face on the F channel.
Yeah, well, there's also alternative facts. We've known for years that her cheese is slid off the cracker, is all I'm saying. And by the way, really sad to hear about her impending divorce.
I'm sure George isn't. But look, I thought that they would make it. I thought they might make it. Only because I still have no idea how Mary Matlin and James Carville are still together.
Yeah, no, that's pretty crazy too.
I have no idea how that works.
I'm trying not to imagine any of it working. No, they're so again, this goes back to the grift, right? It's all about the green. It makes no difference to them. It's where, conservatives, people who own corporations, the billionaires, they want to maintain that power. They want to consolidate it. And they leaned into Fox News spreading that lie, and people died because of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping a line of people. We just had Nina Jankowicz on in the last hour. She's raising money to sue Fox News for what they did to her. And I'm hoping that, Christine Blasey Ford comes out of the woodwork. I'm hoping a bunch of people who Fox has done hit jobs on over the years comes forward and lines up and sues them because, now there's blood in the water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you know that you are spreading lies and it's libel, defamation, all those things. Yeah, good luck, folks.
And I'm shocked that it's taken this long. For someone to go through discovery and find the kind of communications, because it's interesting to me. My grandfather always said, never write something down you don't want your grandmother to read. These people were basically, mocking their audience. Yeah, they were saying all the things that you and I have been believing for forever. They were saying it to each other.
So brazen. Well, two things, right? January 6th committee hearings showing all that footage and the exchanges, but Dominion having the money to take them to the mats. Yeah. And I love it. Yeah.
Real quick, we've got a minute. The mayor's race. I forgot to ask you about it.
Oh yeah. Woo! I'm completely neutral because I'm hoping to be a part of the forum. I'm a little bit nervous about how people are already framing it. And I guess it has some legitimacy that it's a teachers against the cops. In the sense that, in a couple things, race is involved. Paul Vallis was the only white guy in the race, and that makes a difference in one of the most segregated cities in the country. look, I live in a neighborhood with a lot of cops and firefighters, and Vallis lifted a lot of aldermanic races that might have been more vulnerable. And yeah, I'm saying neutral.
All right. No, but are we happy Lori Lightfoot's gone?
Yes.
That seemed to be everybody I know in Chicago. That's the consensus.
Yeah, I wish her the best. I think that she came in contentious with everybody, and it made it really hard. I don't think that you should have your first political job be the leader of a city, because you have to be able to negotiate with people on the political process.
There you go.
And, yeah.
Good stuff, Patty. Appreciate the time. Great stuff. Listen to Patty every weekday, 5 to 7 p.m. on WCPT AM 820. Thanks, Patty. Great stuff.
Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you. Awesome show. Thank you.
Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1893. That was the day that William Greene, longtime president of the American Federation of Labor, was born in Coshocton, Ohio. Greene's family were English and Welsh immigrant miners. He entered the mines at the age of 16. Before he was 20, he had become secretary of the Coshocton Progressive Miners Union. That local would eventually join the United Mine Workers of America. By 1906, Greene had risen to lead the Ohio chapter of the UMWA. Less than 2 decades later, when longtime leader of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, died, Greene was named his successor. Greene believed in union management cooperation. He thought labor could win more gains at the table with management than they could standing in opposition. Greene helped secure some major legislative victories for labor, including the 1935 National Labor Relations Act, which strengthened collective bargaining rights. He also supported the Fair Labor Standards Act, which established the 40-hour workweek and the minimum wage. His tenure at the helm of the AFL was during some of the most tumultuous years in U.S. labor history. This was an era of massive sit-down strikes and organizing drives for workers in industries like steel, meatpacking, and the auto industry. Greene supported organizing industrial workers, but the AFL's leadership at the time, by and large, favored skilled trade labor. Increasingly, Greene clashed with UMWA President John L. Lewis over the question of industrial unions. This led to a split in the labor movement and the formation of the separate Congress of Industrial Organizations. Greene continued to lead the AFL until his death in 1952. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Stuff happens, right? I mean, who could have thought that in these modern times of digital monitoring of everything, something as massive as a freight train could become a toxic fireball rolling undetected and unslowed into an Ohio town? But a Norfolk Southern train did just that, derailing in East Palestine and contaminating the air, water, land, and families with tons of cancer-causing chemicals. Gosh, exclaimed Norfolk Southern. Gosh, exclaimed the Ohio governor. Gosh, exclaimed the U.S. Transportation Chief. Gosh, exclaimed the GOP chair of the Rail Transportation Committee. This is a terrible, unexpected accident, and we're all appalled by it. Only, all of these officials knew full well that this disaster would happen, though they didn't know exactly where. Indeed, far from unexpected, there are more than 1,000 preventable train derailments in the U.S. every year. Norfolk Southern had another one only days after the one in Ohio. And these things don't just happen. They're caused by the profiteering greed of the monopolistic industry's top executives and rich investors. While Norfolk's boardroom elites have been pocketing record profits in recent years, they've used armies of lobbyists and multi-million-dollar political donations to kill safety protections that would prevent such a disastrous record. To cut costs and jack up profits, railroad bosses have rigged the rules to run trains that are absurdly long, go too fast, carry undisclosed toxics in weak tanker cars, have no fire detectors, use outmoded braking systems, and have as few as one crew member on board. One. This is Jim Hightower saying Norfolk's derailed train was made to derail. It pulled 149 cars stretching nearly 2 miles down the track, and it was ill-equipped to detect fires and other problems. This disaster was not an accident. It was mandated by the corporate and government officials now professing outrage. The Hightower...
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So another day and still nothing from our Republican friends on the East Palestine front. And it's amazing how quickly that has fallen out of the outrage machine's sights. It's just incredible to me. I thought it would at least be a couple of weeks, trying to court, some working folks. But again, it comes down to the policies. There is none there. And this is where an opportunity for Democrats to really step forward and show the American people that they truly are the party of the working class. And again, got to get out there and don't offer to hold someone's coat in a street fight. Ball up the little digits and get in there and mix it up. And that's why I've asked Congressman Ruben Gallego to come talk with us. Ruben is running for Senate out in Arizona. And I am thrilled about this race. Ruben, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
So, here's this frame that I have all the time is, Democrats have always been seen weak on issues because they don't fight for things. This thing in East Palestine could have been a perfect opportunity for Democrats to really highlight the fact that Republican policies are horrible for working people, horrible for communities, especially rural communities.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not just East Palestine. It happens all over the country. We just discovered that there are hundreds of, migrant children that are working in meatpacking factories, cleaning meatpacking factories at night. I did that type of work in high school. It's disgusting. It's hard. And we're making 13, 14-year-old kids do that. And they're exploited. And at the same time, American workers are being exploited all over this country. They want to talk about what happened in East Palestine, but, we're the Republicans. We were trying to give our railroad workers more time and days off. They basically abandoned the field of battle for that, but they just love talking about how much they're for them until they have to go against their own business class that actually owns them in the end. Yeah. So they're very much pro-worker as long as it doesn't piss off the Chamber of Commerce, and that's when all of a sudden they dissipate.
No, this is right. One of those things.
The Democrats aren't need to also step up and fight for aggressively for working class people. We do it a lot of times. We do it sometimes, however, we do it, in an intellectual manner instead of the actual, handshake retail where we should stand with the people, working class people of East Palestine or whatever other part of this country.
No, and it comes back down to not just, getting out there and walking, finding, I've been saying for years, we need to adopt a striker. Anytime there's a strike, you should be out there walking along with them, but also the policy part of this. Now, the East Palestine situation, I had, people on this program from the railroad union saying months before this disaster happened, that disaster is coming. Safety is being cut at every corner. Inspections have been cut in half. You could get 90 seconds to inspect a rail car, and nobody was paying attention to it anywhere. This is where, again, we need much stronger labor laws in this country so that the people closest to the job have the ability to shut it down instead of having these big corporations with the kind of lobbying power and the kind of, to steal Rupert Murdoch's line, it's not about red or blue, it's about green, to steal that back. So this is where, again, we need major comprehensive labor law reform.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have the people that's in their best interest to avoid the regulation to be the regulator. And there has been a movement, unfortunately, really since Clinton, where we've actually taken away regulation from the public and then being in the public sphere and actually given it to the people that are supposed to watch themselves. I was actually, get back to the meatpacking factory. I was actually there when the meatpacking factory moved from active FDA inspectors to self-reporting, where people would be audited instead of actually having a regulator on site that would actually make sure that the meat's stored in the right way, there's separation properly of the blood from the meat, all these kind of really things that are very difficult to do, and we got away from that because I think in the name of trying to be bipartisan and more pro-business, we think that deregulation does that. Regulations are important to create trust in the system. Right now, there are lots of people that live near rail yards, and not just rail yards, near railroad tracks, that are now questioning whether or not they want to live there, whether they trust what's actually cutting through their backyards, and it's because we basically have taken away people's trust in government effectively regulating, business interests for the safety of the public.
I mean, the reality is, and what you're talking about is the perfect example that I use all the time is, we should do away with policemen on the highway and we'll just self-regulate ourselves.
Right.
How do you think that's going to go? I
Right.
mean, this is kind of the exact same thing. You give corporate America the ability to police themselves, they're going to look out for what's in their best interest, their bottom line best interest. They don't care about people like you.
If you don't make the penalties strong enough, what they end up doing is they end up making the penalty as part of the cost of business, right? And I've seen that a lot, where some businesses will violate the law and they will go to court, they will diminish the fine, and then they end up basically paying a slap on the wrist and nothing actually changes.
Yeah. See, this is one of my favorite topics because I've got people who say, well, we need strong regulations. I'm a guy who says we need strong unions. I want people on the shop floor to have the power to say, this isn't safe. We're not doing it. I don't care what the government says. I don't care what the company says. We're not going to put ourselves in this. I would argue if those plants that those kids were 13-year-olds on the kill floor had strong unions, you wouldn't see 13-year-olds on the kill floor.
Oh, absolutely not. No. If these shops had been organized by UFCW, this would never have happened. Like, this is definitely happening in non-unionized shops, 100%.
So again, I come back to, I see all of this organizing going on. In fact, this week we had Stephen Greenhouse on the program talking about, all this organizing that's happening at Starbucks, at Amazon, Trader Joe's, and we can go on at all this organizing that's happening. They're not getting contracts. It's still not making people's lives better yet. Maybe it's going to happen. Maybe miraculously it's going to happen. These companies are going to come to their senses, but the laws are so badly broken that it's just not going to happen in my view, which is why it comes back down to people like you who are willing to stand up and say we need major labor law reform. And look, for years they've been telling us we're going to get something. During the Carter years, they were going to end Taft-Hartley. During the Clinton years, we were going to get strike replacement. During the Obama years, we were going to get the Employee Free Choice Act. Now we've got this PRO Act. And I don't see us any closer to getting this stuff done until we working people start voting for people who are going to push it through.
Look, number one, we not only have to just vote for people to push it through, you have to actually ask the secondary question, are you going to get rid of the filibuster to be able to pass these types of pieces of legislation? Because a lot of them will tell you yes, but then also go back quietly, hold the filibuster to stop this type of progress when it comes to this. And the fact is, we have huge wage disparity in this country, massive amount of income inequality. Some of the quickest way to actually reduce income inequality is to have people in unions. And I'm very lucky. I have a lot of union family. I have a brother-in-law who's a LIUNA in Chicago, a sister who's a teacher in Chicago. I have another brother-in-law who's a Teamster mechanic. I grew up in a carpenter union family, and while we were in the union, it was very good pay and very solid, stable pay for my family. There is a pathway to the middle class in a union. And I think the U.S. government and the Democratic Party has to catch up, because younger and younger that you get within the voting world, they're actually more pro-union than people that are older, because they realize that the economy is tilted against them. They realize that the American dream that their parents had is not coming to them. And the only way they can actually really achieve a good middle-class, stable lifestyle is going to be through the power of the union, whether they are in the union. Or people also forget, you benefit even if you're not in a union, that there is a strong union around you, because it sets the floor wage at a higher level.
No, absolutely. And sadly, I say this all the time, the younger generation just watch their parents get ground down, watch their pensions get stolen from them, watch wages being stagnant, watching them struggle as well, still doing okay, but holding on. And this is where I'm hopeful, like you, that the younger generation is going to move us in a good direction. But it's got to come with some labor laws. You go back into the 10s and the 20s. There was a lot of militant labor activity. It wasn't until we got the National Labor Relations Act that said government's going to encourage people to join and form unions. A kind of a peace treaty, if you will, because workers were literally tearing this country apart with strikes that were going on, that we saw a massive increase and then an explosion in a middle class. So that history is kind of important, I think.
Look, I think you're kind of seeing the elements of this right now. The fact that a lot of people aren't going back to work right now.
Yeah.
And I hear this from the business community, like people aren't going back to work. Like, well, you know why they're not coming to work? Because they get treated like shit. Their pay hasn't increased. They enjoyed being home. They realized that they can stay at home and maybe they're not making as much money, but they rather sacrifice money to be able to spend time with their family. And why are they going to go struggle and work for a company that doesn't care about them, that doesn't give them consistent, wage growth, that doesn't give them stability? And that's why everyone's these businesses are asking, like, when can we get the workers back? Like, you're going to get the workers back when you start treating them with respect.
Yeah.
You start actually paying them. And until you do that, you're going to have this continuation happening. And so, in some sense, there is a kind of a small, subtle strike that's happening right now. But if we could organize people to actually fight for unions for them, you'll see you'd see a lot better results. And again, you'd actually grow the American middle class.
No, absolutely. I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Congressman Ruben Gallego. He's the congressman for Arizona. It's his 3rd congressional district. Also running for Senate. You can check out his website, gallegoforarizona.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can help them out. I'm sure a donation would be always appreciated. These are
always
expensive,
especially for March 31st.
Always expensive stuff. But you brought up the filibuster, and I think this is kind of one of the most important things, because Senator Sinema, she's been a roadblock to a lot of progress in the Senate. And I say the Senate's the place where where progress goes to die, and she's been one of the guards of that. The question then comes, why you, Ruben? Why you instead of her?
Well, look, I didn't want it to be me. I actually was very supportive of Kirsten Sinema for many years. And I love the job I'm doing in the House right now. I actually have seniority. I get to be on great committees that focuses on veterans, on the military affairs. I love my district. I have a baby girl coming. I mean, all these things. But I didn't go to Congress and sacrifice time away from my family to not actually do change. And I was really excited in 2020 when we had an opportunity, when we hit the trifecta. I actually thought this is an opportunity really to change the direction of this country, to really make people a priority instead of the business community the priority, to really make available the American dream to everybody. And I was pumped about it. And then time and time again, Kirsten kept on being the obstructionist that she is, and stopping real progress. We had the opportunity of the child tax credit. That child tax credit brought childhood poverty down 50%. And so what does she do? She does nothing to fight for it. She ends up fighting for hedge funds and Wall Street managers for their carried interest loophole instead of for working families. We had an opportunity to really rebuild this country with a real infrastructure law, and she basically watered that down. We had an opportunity for working parents to actually have stable, subsidized childcare so that actually they could continue their work and not just work to pay for a childcare so they can just have the bare get along by the bare minimum. And she stood in that way. I'm not here on this earth, and certainly not in Congress, to do incremental change. And she stands in the way, and she's not going to change, so I'm going to have to change her out of there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the day I lost faith in her was the day whatever that costume she was wearing, and did that little dance voting down the minimum wage increase, the little curtsy with the with the McCain thumbs down.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people will, besides like that, I have horrible taste, so I am never ever going to comment on anybody else's clothing, because God knows, like, I've seen some pictures of me, and that was always a big mistake. But from my perspective of what people felt in Arizona, it was not what she was wearing, it's that she did it and then afterwards did not talk to Arizonans and said, hey, this is why I felt I had to do it. She just walked away and then, basically told the press nothing, and never went back to Arizona and had a town hall and stood there on the firing line and said, hey, this is why I did it. No, she just expected the Arizonans, not Democrats, not Republicans, not independents. She expected just Arizonans to suck it up and deal with it. Guess what? You don't get to do that when you're an elected official, right? My bosses are the voters of Arizona. And if I do something that is against their will, they have a right to call me in and ask me, what was my thinking? What was my motivation? Now, we may not agree with what it is, but it is my job to at least explain myself. And she feels that she's above that. You're not above that. No one's above that if you're running for office.
I wouldn't expect you to comment on her clothing. I can do that, though. the whole display to me was well off and a slap in the face to working people. But you brought up the first term, and I want to finish up on this because I think what you guys accomplished in those first 2 years, transformational. I think what the Biden administration has put us on a course towards is in 10 years we're going to look back at that being a pivotal moment in moving this country in leaps and bounds forward.
Yeah.
So I most certainly want a Senate who's going to be thinking in terms of making sure that we do all the things that you guys got accomplished in that short period of time, and then expanding on and making sure that happens going forward, which is why I think it's important to have working class centric senators in that institution, in that body.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to have people that remember being working class. Sinema has forgotten where she came from. And maybe she didn't work in the factories or in the sites that I did. Maybe she didn't work, as a janitor. Maybe that's why she's totally forgotten about it. But we need people that actually go to Washington D.C. that are working class and remember what it means to actually be working class, because that's who you need to be fighting for right now.
Yeah, I wish you the best. I hope March 31st, I think you said, was the deadline.
March 31st is going to be the first big deadline, so please go to gallegoforarizona.com. We are powered by small dollar donors. We have already more than 7,000 individual small dollar donors. She's going to be largely funded by Wall Street. We can beat her with the power of small dollar donors. There's not enough people out on Wall Street to give her money, but there are millions of people that can give us $5, $10, and it adds up. It adds up, trust me.
As I say, we've out-procreated them, even if they do have all the money. Ruben, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again. Keep up the great work. And again, we want you to come back early and often.
Yeah, my pleasure. Gracias. Have a good night.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Congressman Ruben Gallego. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.